Welcome to the reading of Gaspard the Fox. This is by Zeb Soanes and illustrated by James Mayhew. This is a book set in London and it's about an urban fox that the author actually knows, which is really nice. It's inspired by real life, and a lot of the characters in the book are inspired by his neighbours and other people that he knows, so that's really interesting. If anyone feels like Zeb Soanes sounds quite familiar, that's because he's actually a host on BBC Radio and sometimes on BBC television. So we're going to get started and go through, and at the end of the book there's actually some really cool little fox facts and things like that. So let's get started. So this is a fairly unknown book. It's quite new. It was printed in 2018, but it's actually such a wonderful little story that sometimes it's nice to discover new stories. And for anyone who uses the popular video app, don't know how much this I'm allowed to say, but like TikTok or stuff like that, there are videos that pop up from time to time of Gaspard, so that's always cool to look out for, especially if you like foxes. And for anyone who doesn't like foxes, I can guarantee you're going to fall in love with Gaspard because he's absolutely wonderful. So I hope you enjoy the story. Gaspard's nose was cold and wet, but the air in his den smelled warm and sweet. It was early evening and still light. He had been asleep all day and he was hungry. He leapt over the broken fence, past the scruffy garages, and crept cautiously out into the street. He wondered if he might see the kind man with the bicycle. Gaspard wasn't frightened of him like he was some other people. On a wall by an old pub was a lean, grey cat. It was licking its claws as if it was savouring the memory of everything it had ever eaten. "Lovely day," said Gaspard politely. "My, aren't you a handsome fellow?" the cat observed, stretching out each paw to inspect first the front, then the back. "Your mother was clearly a vixen of good breeding." Gaspard blushed warmly, though it was difficult to tell behind his thick red fur. "Thank you," he smiled. "How did you tear your ear?" asked the cat. "Oh, it's always been like that," answered Gaspard brightly. "My mother said it made me unique." "Very distinctive," purred the cat. "What are you?" "What are you called?" "I'm Gaspard," replied Gaspard. He liked saying his name. "A French name," said the cat with interest, peering down at him. "You really are an uncommon little fox." "I am Peter." "Peter?" repeated Gaspard. "Most of the cats I've met have silly names like Mimi or Tigger." "Peter is a very proper name for a cat," said Peter. He flicked his tail to indicate he had nothing more to say on the matter. "Well, nice to meet you, Peter. I'm going to look for something to eat." "Try the canal," Peter offered, hopefully. "There's been a festival today. You might find quite a feast along the towpath." Gaspard's eyes widened. "Would you like to come?" "No, thanks," said Peter. "I had some fillets of plaice before I came out." Gaspard looked blank. "It's a fish," explained Peter, "with delicate white flesh. Quite delicious." Gaspard was impressed. I've never eaten fish, he admitted, and the thought made his stomach gurgle. Well, happy hunting, Gaspard. Peter sprang to his feet and disappeared over the wall. Gaspard rushed through the little park and down to the canal. There were boats everywhere, brightly painted and decorated with flags. One was a floating bookshop, and people were drinking and chatting at little tables. Gaspard could hear music, and there were unfamiliar smells all around. Warm, spicy smells and woody, smoky smells. There were still quite a few people along the towpath, so he kept close to the wall and moved quickly. "Look, fox!" shouted a woman, pointing her phone excitedly. Gaspard turned his head in panic and ran straight into a bin. It was piled so full of rubbish that a bag toppled off, covering him in black ash. He sneezed, and the woman took a picture. Gaspard was so dirty, he hardly looked like a fox at all. He ran to a bridge where a group of people were watching a man dancing. Nobody seemed to notice Gaspard now, so he sat for a moment. The dancing man wore a suit covered in pearly white buttons, and his friend was squeezing a musical box that laughed out at the tune. The man made a sudden hop, and a little dog with curly hair yelped and ran straight into Gaspard. "Are you okay?" asked Gaspard. "Too many people," she barked, and gave him a puzzled sniff. "What sort of dog are you?" I'm Gaspard," he explained, trying not to lie. Dogs and foxes aren't usually friends. "I'm Finty," replied the dog. "Are you hungry?" "Starving," said Gaspard. She led him to a boat with lots of empty tables outside. "They were selling hot dogs this afternoon," said Finty excitedly. "We might find some tasty treats." "I've never met a dog without its human before," said Gaspard, searching for scraps. "That's because I escape," said Finty. "I've made a hole in the back of my kennel. My owner thinks I'm still there. I do it when she's watching TV so that I can have adventures." Gaspard found the last sausage, but before he could eat it, the table above him lifted off the ground. The owner of the hot dog boat was clearing away. "Oi, get out of it!" he shouted angrily. "Clear off!" Gaspard panicked and jumped onto the boat. Finty barked at the boatman, who tried to kick her away with his big boot. Gaspard ran along the boat and leapt towards the towpath. But as he jumped, his paw caught a rope and he tumbled, splosh, straight into the canal. The water tasted oily and his nose was covered in green weeds. Gaspard began to swim clumsily, gasping for air. Finty followed along the towpath, jumping and barking encouragement. "You can do it! Come on, Gaspard!" The water began to flow very quickly. The lock gates were opening, and like dirty bath water gushing down the plug hole, he was forced, plop, through to the other side, where Finty was waiting. She stared at him as he scrambled out and shook off the dirty water to reveal his shiny, wet, red fur. "You're not a dog, you're a fox," she said in astonishment. Gaspard was worried that she might push him back into the water. "That's so cool," said Finty, her eyes gleaming and her tail wagging. "I'm friends with a real fox." "Friends?" said Gaspard, and he felt warm again, forgetting how wet and hungry he was. "I have to get back," said Finty, "but let's have another adventure tomorrow." "I'd like that very much," called Gaspard, but Finty was already out of sight. Gaspard had made a new friend. Perhaps two, he thought, as he spotted Peter on a bench across the road. Peter was trying to catch a butterfly. When he saw Gaspard, he quickly made himself look very dignified. "Hello, Peter. What are you up to?" Lepidoptery, Peter answered grandly. "It means the collection of butterflies. It's a hobby of mine." "You do use big words," said Gaspard with a smile. "I listen to a lot of Radio 4, explained Peter as he leapt down to join him. "Come on, you can walk me home." Gaspard told Peter all about the canal and meeting Finty. Peter sniffed. Dogs can be exhausting and stupid. "Not Finty," protested Gaspard. "She's good at escaping and everything." "Then you must bring her to meet me another day. This is my house." Peter had stopped outside an enormous house with big stone steps. At that moment, the door opened and a woman with bright, spotty boots called down to them, "Come in, Fluffy." Peter's fur bristled. "Fluffy?" asked Gaspard. "I thought you said your name was—" Peter hissed, "If you say another word, I will never speak to you again." With a flick of his tail, he bounded up the steps and rubbed himself around the lady's boots, purring loudly. "What were you doing with that grubby fox?" Gaspard heard her say. "You don't know where he's been." Peter winked as she closed the door. Click, click, whir. Gaspard's ears picked up. He turned and saw the kind man on the bicycle returning from work. The man gave a short ting of his bell and stopped outside the block of flats. He turned to the little fox. "Hello there, friend," he said as he unclipped and twisted parts of the bicycle so it folded up just bigger than one of its wheels. Gaspard loved to watch him do it. A window opened above them, and another man looked down, smiling. "Hello, Foxy. What have you been up to today?" "Chasing squirrels, probably," answered the man with the bicycle, lifting it through the doorway. A packet fell to the ground with a soggy scrunch, spilling its warm contents onto the flower bed. "Oh," said the man, looking at Gaspard. Well, it's yours now, friend. He smiled and closed the door with a clunk. Gaspard watched as a light came on at the top of the stairs, and he heard the two men laughing. It was getting dark. He sniffed the ground. Fish and chips! Peter would be impressed. He gathered it gently in his mouth and trotted around the back of the flats, past the scruffy garages, under the broken fence, and down into his den to enjoy his first fish supper. In one exciting evening, he had made 2 friends. He was happy, his stomach full, and the future felt bristling with adventures. So that's the story of Gaspard the fox, who lives in London and went to find some new friends, which I think is just such a lovely story. What's really nice about this book is that at the back they actually have some really cool little foxy facts, and I really love foxes, so I'm going to share these with you because I think some of these are really cool to know. Foxy facts. This story was inspired by a real fox. Gaspard is a French name and rhymes with renard, the French word for fox. Here are some other foxy facts to impress your friends. Foxes are one of the most well-known wild animals in the UK. It's thought that there are 10,000 foxes in London, as many as 37 in every square kilometre. The fox is a member of the dog family and a distant relative of the wolf. Foxes are mostly active at night. A female fox is called a vixen, a male fox is called a dog, and a baby fox is called a cub or kit. A group of foxes is called a skulk or leash. Foxes are omnivorous, which means they eat mostly anything. Their usual diet is birds, worms, insects, fruit, and small mammals such as mice and rats. In city areas, the food we throw away can make up more than half a fox's diet. A fox's home is called its den or earth. Vixens dig their dens under tree roots or garden sheds. Foxes hide or bury spare food to eat later, although another fox may find it first. Foxes communicate with each other using 28 different types of calls. A fox can run 30 miles an hour. A fox's tail is called a brush. Their eyes are similar to a cat's with narrow pupils. This helps them see at night. They have amazing hearing. It is said that they can hear a watch ticking nearly 40 metres away. Foxes have been spotted riding on the lifts and carriages of the London Underground. One was even spotted enjoying the view from the top of a London sightseeing bus. A smart fox, named Romeo, was found living at the top of the Shard, Europe's tallest skyscraper, feeding off scraps of food left by the builders. There's 288 metres, or 72 floors, off the ground. I think foxes are a lot cleverer and a lot more interesting than people give them credit for. They're not a nuisance, they're just a product of their environment, which is a shame. And the more that their natural environment is destroyed, the less likely they are to be able to stay away from more urban areas. So I think you should be nicer to urban foxes. They don't have the easiest of lives, and they're actually quite nice. We actually have two urban foxes that live in our garden, and one of them is named Robin, and the other one is named Todd. And what happens is they like to come out around when it starts getting dark to search for a bit of food. But also sometimes they like to come and sleep in the garden during the day, which is really nice because it means they find it really safe. And sometimes just having that little spare bit at the end of your garden, if you're lucky enough to have a little garden, you know, it's nice to just have a little space for a bit of a fox. They don't care about cats. They don't care about your dog. They just want to just chill out and have some food. And I think that's really nice. So I hope you enjoyed the story of Gaspard. There are other stories of Gaspard's adventures, so I highly encourage you to go out and find them. This is a lovely little book to have in your library. It doesn't take up much space. And there's some nice little illustrations there on the back that are worth going and having a look for. So thank you for joining me and Pooh today, and we hope to see you at the next one.